I grew up in a very, very violent, afflictive family in Ohio, in the middle of Amish country. So, I watched the horse and buggies go by, and we were the only Roman Catholic family. So I felt very weird and out and all that kind of stuff, like where do I belong, stress, all the other things. But at that time, I really focused, and here's what we're going to talk about resilience, is I focused on, I was smart, I was attractive, and I had a type A personality, and I said, I will get out of this violence. And I saw nurses, I saw teachers, women, that had power, and I said, you know what, I know I'm going to get an education and get out of here. So anyway, I did. But I thought you could leave your stress behind you. This is before we had all the research and everything else. So fast forward, I marry a gastroenterologist, we have 2 beautiful children, we live out on near West Paces Ferry, I have this little life, I'm a financial analyst and a broker. I get promoted, I go up to Wall Street, have an office on the 104th floor of the World Trade Center. I'm commuting. This would be 1987, 88. Buying and selling companies all over the world, worked with the Chinese in Beijing. But what happened was, I thought I could outrun my stress, and outrun what environment and also genetics. But what happened was, I noticed I started losing weight. I got smaller. I went from 130 to 125 to 120, But now remember, this would be a time when we hadn't studied stress yet. And started drinking more. Alcoholism is in my family. Scotch, Stolies, and remember, I was on the street, so it's pretty normalized also. But I was the only woman in 75 men too. So I felt like I was carrying the mantle for all of us women back then that I couldn't quit. So anyway, what happened was I had absolutely a nervous breakdown one day on the 104th floor of the World Trade Center and could not get on the elevator anymore. 2 days later, it happened, I met Bill Moyer. Anybody old enough to know Bill Moyer, Healing in the Mind, PBS. And he was great. He looked at me and I felt like a loser and I'd worked my whole life for this, and he smiled, I'll never forget, kissed me on the cheek. And he said, darling, you don't know anything about stress, chronic stress, resilience. I went, what are you talking about? So that fell into an odyssey of love with him, and he showed me the special, and he made a phone call and called all the people he had interviewed in this World Global Special. And he said, you can stop being a broker and do all this stuff and go do that. So I did. I left Wall Street, sold every single thing I had, bought a farm. Anybody know where Helen, Georgia, up in the mountains up there? Bought a cabin with no water, no electricity, no power, no nothing, in the middle of right by the National Forest, and decided that I was going to do my Emerson Thoreau thing, because I was so, at that point, manipulative and, thought I ran the world, that I thought, I need to be with lions and tigers and bears and figure out who I am. So in that, out of that came, somebody invited me to a lecture at Emory with the Dalai Lama, which changed my life. He's fascinated, as you all know, with stress, and the odyssey of me, instead of running from it, which most of us try to do, I fell in love with it. I went, my God, all of these people that I worked with all of these years in money and finance that turned into alcoholics, 3 marriages, car after car, house after house, their lives were being destroyed, and back then, it was like, are they evil? Are they bad? Because we didn't know anything about stress. These were all results of chronic stress. So that's what happened, and fast forward, I decided to find stress in any way I can. I went to Emory. They guided me into battered women's shelters, AIDS hospices, CHOA, Children's Healthcare. I worked on the cancer floor. I worked with the poorest of the poor in Atlanta in unbelievable circumstances. Fascinated with suffering, because suffering is stress. It really is. So anyway, that's what happened. That's how I got here. I wrote my first book, and then the rest was history. Stress, I guess right in I don't know the exact date, 2000-ish, we started MRIs, CAT scans. So we did cortisol swabs. We could actually test stress, and so it was absolutely fascinating. So that's what happened. And then, everything from Oprah to Oz to you name it. Because stress took off, people saw that it was a real thing, and it was ruining people's lives, and it was making them sick. And then the NIH and the CDC, I knew people there, and they started doing immense research. A lot of my clinical training, most of it, was done at Harvard with different experts. So they had the money and the funds to absolutely do the research. So that's how I got here. I'm married to a saint who's Our marriage has been, oh, I heard there's a tribe in the Arctic Circle and they handle stress a certain way. And Jim would wake up in the morning with a stickum on the refrigerator, be back when I get back. So our child, by the way, our daughter was here at Piedmont. She's a critical care doctor, ICU critical care. And then she's up at Wellstar now. So she loves Piedmont too. And so we're all medical and very much into all this stuff and love everything that you guys do. So the only reason I told you that story was for you to understand that I just didn't go, get a PhD, do it, and think that this was interesting. It was literally to save my own life. And then I decided with my first book to dedicate my life to Harriet. And I call Harriet the archetype of every woman who's a single mom with 3 kids, and she's working 2 jobs. Back then down at Capitol and Grady Homes, East Lake, does anybody remember before they were raised? I worked down there relentlessly. And she's a woman who's trying to go to school at night and has a husband. She's the archetype of all of us who are trying to put bread on the table, get an education, and make our life better. But she's overbooked, she's overworked, and she's overwhelmed, and she's really tired, and she needs help. So I figured I'd dedicate my life to her very, very much. I love her. So when I'm in a corner or writing a new book or doing anything, I actually channel her and ask her what she needs. I love her. My whole life is to serve her. So then I came to volunteer here and emailed Chris, and I said, I need to get out. I'm doing too much writing books and media, and I need to be with people again. And I said, I need to volunteer. I'll push wheelchairs. I'll clean bedpans. I've done all of it before. I said, I'll do anything. I just need to be around regular people, and I need to be regular and not take care of anybody. So then Robin and I talked, and Lauren, and we said, hey, you can come down here and do something maybe a little different. So that's how we got here. So thank you for helping and bringing these people this wonderful material. This is our world today. And our world today is very different. It's gun violence, which again, when you've been doing this as long as I've been doing it, it's changed a lot. Terrorism, pandemics, which is the stress that we're dealing with now, of course, congressional gridlock, and of course, global warming. Look at what's going on in Mississippi right now. I mean, for all of us, we have to be compassionate. Stress is the epidemic of the 21st century. I coined a term called self-aside. And in this term, you will see that this image is of a woman kind of shattered or broken, trying to figure out how to make it. And what self-aside is homicide is killing someone else. Suicide is killing your physical body. Self-aside is killing your soul self. And this original term came from my dear friend who is dead now, Patrick Malone, who's a psychiatrist. And 35 years ago, he wrote a book and wrote a chapter on self-aside. And he said it'll be the future. He called it a pandemic of the 21st century. He said because technology will take off. He was an unbelievable prophetic person. So it's really killing the inner self. And this is going to be my next book, is going to be self-aside. The emotional poisons that are around today, which are things like stress, technology. We are not virtual. We're people of a story. We actually put people in MRIs, and we actually put ports in them, and we look at their hormones. We look at their brain when they're storytelling. We look at them when they're in community, when they're brainstorming. It's a completely different experience. And one of the emotional poisons that's happening now with telecommuting is, in my era, they didn't let us change jobs and work from home. So we dreamed of an era like this where you could work from home. Let's work 3 days a week or 5 days a week from home. But the problem now is isolation. Isolation is one of the biggest health challenges we face in our world, not just in our country. National healthcare agencies, like in Canada and in France, also in England, are taking this as a #1 healthcare priority. They have loneliness hotlines. It's part of your evaluation when you go in to see a physician, because we know that it's a huge driver of disease now is isolation, because we are human and we absolutely are not meant to be alone. Worry is also another poison, very, very huge. We worry all the time. Our brains were not meant to function to turn on CNN or Fox or CBS or whatever your news source is and hear about somebody blowing something up in South Africa, 1,000 people dying in China. We take in such massive amount of information. It actually overloads our brain so tremendously. And so that is also another big problem. And then it makes us worry. We worry about pandemics. We worry about things that aren't going to happen. Fear is huge.
Cardiac MRI. Attention, all personnel. Medical alert.
Fear is one of the biggest things too. We're watching people that are more afraid than ever before. They're afraid of things like global warming. They're afraid of their children growing up. They're afraid of not having economic. So these are some of the emotional poisons which you all know about. Technology, we are not, even though everything is virtual, we are not as humans virtual. And then stress. And I love this one. I'm an animal, obviously, animal person. I just dreamed I was a rich, powerful human traveling the world, attending high-level meetings, commanding billions of dollars of assets. What a nightmare. No kidding. When I was at the farm, I kept anywhere between 12 and 35 dogs. We had a huge rescue operation. It was amazing. And when I really lost my mind, I'd either lay on a pregnant mare, because we were in the breeding business, or I'd lay in the middle of my dogs. And I know you guys know the science on that. Stress is positive or negative stress. Positive stress is, I am really excited about being with you today, and I hope Robin and Lauren are excited about today. So that's positive stress. Negative stress was when my head would go to, God, I'm on human-made cortisol. I'm on steroids. I wonder if what's gonna happen? Because I can't even feel my hands. Then I would go, okay, take the switch back to positive. So positive and negative stress. Remember, stress is a law of physics. It's not a negative term. I love physics. So it's kind of like if I pushed my finger against here, that's stress, right? And it's fine. Nothing happens, the body recoups. But if I push on this and I keep pushing on it, I'm going to have a bruise. So that is exactly the thing about stress. It's really not positive or negative. It's pretty neutral. It's the law of physics. And then there's acute and chronic stress. Acute stress is normal. Acute stress is me coming down here with Vanna driving my car. And so it was just a few minutes. And that's acute, and I adore her. So, then your child, this never happened to me, but I've heard these stories about the principal calling a mother. Anyway, the call, your adrenaline, it's not my child, you run in and whatever they've done. That's acute. Chronic stress is if the principal calls you every week, every day, over a long period of time, chronic diseases. So it's the chronic stress which is the real problem, not the acute stress. Contagious stress is huge now. I actually worked in Ireland at one point. They've taken stress seriously for about 30 years. They're way ahead of us, the Europeans are, on taking stress seriously in healthcare. Contagious stress is, for an example, we're sitting here having a good time doing something. Somebody comes in and then they go, oh my gosh, somebody here has the coronavirus. Or did you know that there was a shooting down at Home Depot? Whatever it is, we immediately have it. Then you'll go back to the 4th floor, you'll go back to Noonan, you'll go back to Athens, and then we take it out and we go back and tell the same story again. Actually, in Europe, they have like a CDC that they actually look at corporations, because I work for a lot of corporations, and they go in and they look where the most turnover is, where the most unhappy employees are, where the highest cholesterol. They look at all the biomarkers, and they actually see that as a pandemic, and they go in, and then they see what stressors are there. Is there a bad boss there, a bad manager? Is there a teeny break room, and there are 40 people on that floor all going to the small break room? We solved one company's problem just by taking a break room and disseminating it into 4 different coffee pots at 4 different corners. Because what would happen was they would go, did you know that there's going to be downsizing? They're going to fire 5 people. Did you know they're cutting healthcare costs? So see, then the person would go back and spread it, and it became contagious, just exactly like a virus. It's very interesting. Attitude is important. Attitude is everything. So again, you all are in the healthcare field. So whenever happens with a patient, with your career, anything, it's either positive or negative, and that is what determines whether you're going to take something as a positive stress or a negative stress. Self-aside data. By 2020, which is this year, the World Health Organization, depression is the leading cause of disability in the world. 90% of physicians visit, this is a Harvard statistic, are stress-related. And the Dalai Lama's research people got this. The onset of clinical depression in 1960 was 55 years old. Currently, it's 25 years old. And we all know that depression is the driver of heart disease, of course, but also all diseases. So that's a huge number. Stress affects your life. One of the statistics is more than 40% of 16 to 19-year-olds, these are kids, are obese. This is a Duke and Wake Forest University study. But worse, 26% of 2 to 5-year-olds are overweight, and more than 15% are morbidly obese. So, and again, we're going to talk about this is mirroring your parents' stress, because we know the data tells us that. And why is stress different today? Our nervous systems haven't changed in 160,000 years. They really haven't, but they are morphing now because of epigenetics, because of the different kinds of stressors. And some of these are technology, the breakdown of the family. We have more blended families. We move around the country. We don't live in communities anymore. We have lack of meaningful work. Tom Friedman wrote a book called The World is Flat. And what he talks about is all the jobs, 90% of our jobs will be outsourced to robotics and technology. You all are so blessed because that's impossible with healthcare. It's all about caring for the patient. So you all are in the sweetest spot you can be to have a meaningful life. Lack of control of nature, and look what's happening to the climate. Lack of sleep, 33% of us have insomnia problems. Lack of exercise. Commuting also is a huge thing that's changed, especially in Atlanta. It's one of the biggest stressors. Do you know if you commute more than 45 minutes, your cortisol levels are the same as a fighter pilot in battle? Or the same as a fire, these are people that are trained, firemen, women too, that are on a fire, that your cortisol levels are just as much. So that's how hypervigilant you are in traffic. And if I forget, I do have tips for that, since all of us live in Atlanta. Because I've really been able to turn that around to make it me time instead of feeling like a victim. It becomes your time to nourish yourself. So health, stress, of course, it's the silent killer. Heart disease, blood pressure, stroke. Diabetes, we know it changes the way that we produce and the way we absorb sugar in our bodies. Memory loss, premature aging. Actually, your skin, all these people do all the skin products and everything else. All my friends, of course, are at this age that I am. So everybody's, everything from Botox to, you name it, I know you know this. I don't know, like laser stuff. I went to one of my friends the other night and we went to eat and I just went, oh Jesus, you had a beehive reaction? And she just looked at me, no, I paid a lot of money for this. I went, oh Jesus, Mary and Joseph. I was like, okay, whatever, baby. But, and this person is so stressed. Her job is like, she lives in a high stress thing. And all I could think of was, remember, when you're stressed, you're shallow breathing. So the first thing that's going to get that oxygen is what? Your brain, of course, it's got to function. Then next is your heart. Next, vital organs. Guess what's getting it last? Your skin, because it can take it last. So that's why when I talk to people like her and I go, you need, yoga, meditation, I don't have time for that. You kidding? I've got to go to my dermatologist, a plastic surgeon. I went, yeah, you keep going, baby. He or she loves you. Weight gain is a huge one. I have more compassion. Well, of course, since I've been on steroids for 3 weeks, I'm having a lot of compassion right now. Puffy girl. But what happens is we know, and of course the research shows that we women, that when we're stressed, our fat cells get bigger, especially in the abdomen. So that's why we get belly fat. And this goes way back to when we were in the caves, stirring the pot, and we had the babies, and we had milk, and we sent Paul out to get a rabbit, and Paul didn't come back. And whoever ate him, Tyrannosaurus Rex or whatever. So we were stressed, so guess what happened? Our DNA kicked in, our genetics, and went, okay, hold on to this belly fat. We've got two babies here. We've got to be sustainable. So what happened was, you sat there, then Paul came by, or Jerry, or whoever was next, you notice who the queen was. Go out and get me a rabbit, or a beaver, or something. So he goes out to get some protein, she sits there, he doesn't come back. Her stress level goes up, right? She's got the fire, but she's lactating, she's got the milk, and she's got the belly. So she's got the warmth for the tribe to survive, she's got the milk, she's got the need. So the reason this was meant for adaptation, guys. The problem now is our brains are taking the same adaptation thing because we're so stressed. You get it? So we need to have compassion for women. I swear. When I was on an elevator the other day and I wanted to go up and just kiss and hug this woman because she was talking to this friend and February, I'm on another diet and I'm going to get this off. And you know, she's commuting 2 hours, she's got 4 kids, blah, blah, blah. I just wanted to kiss her belly like she was pregnant and just go, honey, that's adaptation at its best, that belly right there. See, because we can't get rid of it. Our DNA will not allow us. We need to be compassionate about that. Insomnia is huge. As you well know, a third of Americans now have insomnia. And we know that that is the time the healing happens. We all know that. That's when your IgGA, that's when your hormones change, everything at night when you're sleeping. Depression and anxiety. I think in the last 15 years, suicide's up 25%. I've had 2 friends commit suicide this year. 2019, a very tragic year, horrible. And my best friend committed suicide when I was about 35. So and I work with the public schools. Suicide rate has gone up 40% in girls between the ages of 12 and 16. So I've been working with the rehab public school system and the Atlanta public school system for a couple years on interventions. Chronic pain is worse. It weakens the immune system, headaches, chronic headaches, and of course infertility. Relationships that affects, you guys know, the spouse, partner, children, friends, coworkers. At your job, I also do, my daughter was at Wellstar, of course, when the UPS shooting happened, I guess last year, year before. And I work with corporations. I did the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C., Newtown. I do horrible things that happen in workplaces. As a matter of fact, when I was at Robinson Humphrey in 1989, a guy came in and killed my assistant right there. And it was, this before we knew about stress, okay, and rage and handling anger at work. So the thing and this is a whole nother class, but the thing I get frustrated with, I just did an interview yesterday with CNBC. We were talking about violence and bullying at work and the effect it has on productivity and absenteeism and everything. And we were talking about supervisors and management they give all of this responsibility to HR and they tell HR to handle it, human resources and personnel, and yet the supervisor and the management needs to know, and you guys know this because you work at a hospital, that when somebody starts getting edgy or withdrawing, we need to, have a buddy system that we can start to talk to each other and then go to a supervisor or manager and let people know when somebody is not right. But anyway, stress causes anger, rage, absenteeism, productivity, turnover. And children mirror your stress. This is one thing I see with women all the time. They will be overstressed, try to pay for private school, try to get Sally her little shoes she wants or summer camp, and they are totally stressed out, not realizing that we know that the children absorb the stress of their parents. Send them to a different school, a public school, get an apartment close to it, whatever you do, for God's sake, they will inherit your stress. And what I deal with a lot is, especially in Buckhead and Brookhaven area, is I deal with a lot of people who have accelerated their children to be at the right school, smart and everything. They go to a Harvard or Yale or Princeton or whatever, their dream schools, but then when they reach 30, they're either drinking, they're meltdown, suicide, whatever the problems are, because of, they have not handled the stress. If I could do one thing in the school system, it would be, just as you know, mindfulness training and stress K through 3. So then children would be able to go, my tummy hurts, my head hurts. Then they would be able to process, it's my teacher. I don't like math. I have to go to the bathroom. And, they could identify through awareness instead of feeling like something's wrong with them, because they will carry that practice for the rest of their lives. And stress is a gift. Every obstacle is an opportunity. Look at me. I should have been dead a zillion years ago with the horrible, horrible, unbelievable childhood I survived and a lot of things that happened after that. But every single time, what I've learned in all of my research study and the amazing people, the Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh, Jimmy Carter happens to be a very good friend. I've been very, very blessed to realize that every single, I don't know, how would you like to be Desmond Tutu in apartheid in South Africa, okay? How would you like to be when Jimmy Carter was in the White House? How would you like to be the Dalai Lama when they were skinning his monks? I mean, these people have been through unbelievable, Nelson Mandela. These people have been through incredible stress, and I'm fascinated with resilience. And if you ever want to be inspired, read about these people, whether it's Ulysses S. Grant, whether it's Lincoln, whether it's Susan B. Anthony. I don't care who it is. These people, the resilience they have. Harriet Tubman. You know, before the movie or anything else, I read 10 biographies on her 5 or 10 years ago. And it's amazing. So stress is a gift. That's the other thing. Please don't run from it. It's telling you your marriage is bad. You don't like your supervisor at Piedmont. You don't feel well. Please listen to it and ask it. Talk to it. Every cell of our body has intelligence. That's the new epigenetics that we're finding out with the new science we have. Don't run from it. So you have to ask yourself, choice, not chance, determines your destiny. So we got to not, and this is a problem and a challenge for women. We have a tendency to go to the victim switch. Here's a switch, on, off. And ours is, nope, I am in control and I can make choices. Do you choose self-aside or self-care? So we're going to, self-care. I'll do this where science meets the soul. This is my training, whether it was UMass, Dean Ornish, you cardiology. People know Dean Ornish. He's very famous, Preventive Medicine Institute, Duke, Johns Hopkins. This is the medical model they use, whether you have cancer, heart disease, or stress. And it's diet, exercise, group support, and stress reduction. So what happened to me, I lived in my farm in North Georgia, north of Gainesville, went to the medical center there, came back all trained, all polished, built my center, and started cardiac rehab groups, pulmonary groups, and cancer groups. So I started with 40 people in the cardiac rehab group. I did all the support and everything for the cardiac rehab. We taught mindfulness, cooking, did the whole thing. I coordinated the whole program. So I came back all polished, ready to do it. 40 people showed up the first week, 35, 30, 20, 15 the next week. So I was ready to jump off a bridge. I thought, you know, do I have halitosis? What's the problem here? But the problem was that I asked them all, I called them all at home and said, could you come back and tell me what the problem is? And they all came back, and every one of them said that they had had a zipper. They had just been told that they had heart failure. They had just been told that they had a tumor the size of a baseball in their abdomen, whatever story they had. And even though these were support groups, and this was the medical model I was taught, they feel like this model was just a doctor writing another prescription. And they felt they just couldn't take one more thing. They were trying to deal with their children, go to work, pay their medical bills, and this was just one more hour thing to go to in a week to diet. The word diet tests negative in 90% of the world. How many of us have been on a million diets? And we gain what? 92% of our weight, 92% of us gain 10 pounds back when we do it. Group support. Now I know this is Atlanta. In North Georgia, when you said group support, every one of these 40 people said, I'm not going to tell my problems to everybody because it'll be all over the county. And I went, oh, I was thinking of it as, you know, a psychological, get it? I was thinking, I wasn't identifying with them. I got it. I went, oh, I never thought of it that way. I wondered why you were afraid to come back. So, didn't understand diet. Why don't you love us teaching you about food? But the other thing about diet, which was interesting, this is where we're human. They were afraid of losing their family recipes. They were afraid of not having Thanksgiving and Christmas and all the stuff and the fruitcake that their grandmama had. Because when we did this, they would show up at the festivals, right, or whatever the family things were, and they were by themselves on a paper plate or eating, and then people made fun of them. So I didn't know that. So diet, that exercise. They saw exercise just like your cardiac rehab thing here, where you put the monitors on, get on the thing, and go home. So they were like, I'm so tired. I don't even want to do it. I know I'll get better, but I just, you know, again, I've got this zipper. I've got 2 jobs. So what happened was I went, this is very good information. Listening. Then came stress reduction. When you think, oh, stress reduction, I'm going to learn something, what it did, it evoked a negative thing in them. They went, I'm already stressed. So it wasn't a positive. So what I did, I spent 1 year working with these beloved people, by the way, and we are still very close. The ones that have died, I've done every one of their funerals. Been involved in their families' lives for 25 years now, I guess, maybe 25, 30 years. because we got so close through them helping me develop this program. So I'm not going to claim it totally for myself for sure. But what I knew about my doctorate in spirituality and what I knew about living with Aboriginal tribes and living with Native tribes and living with and going to Israel and living with the Israelis and living with different cultures around the world, what I learned was that it had to have meaning. So, what did I hit? So, if it had spiritual meaning, you'll do it. But if it's a doctor writing you another prescription, you're just overwhelmed with another medical model. So what they loved was agrarian. Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, all of them, as you well know, Emerson, Thoreau, they used nature models, natural models. We all identify with it. Remember, we've only been living in buildings, a few thousand years. So our reptilian brain still identifies with the woods and nature sounds. So then they went roots. These are farmers. They said, roots, like the roots. So what they did was, this tethered out through a year. And then they figured out that if they nourish their roots, guess what happens to the tree, right? And then the seasons of life. The two old women loved it. They said, we love the tree image because in fall, you lose everything. Like our child dying or our child going to college. Winter, we lay fallow. Spring, new life. So get it? They were teaching me the biorhythms globally of all of us as humans. Then I said, well, how can I do the 4 roots? So what I did was, this is the truth, I spent 1 month in meditation in my prayer room with 4 posters on the wall, waiting to see what words I could shift on the 4 roots. So the opposite of stress is serenity. So I decided instead of stress reduction, everybody wants serenity, right? They want peace. So serenity, exercise, not on monitors. Exercise was walking. Exercise was doing some chair yoga stretches. Exercise was taking the stairs instead of taking an elevator. And I'm going to be honest, 10 started crying because they hated going to cardiac rehab with all the monitors and stuff. And I said, no, you call me in the morning. We'll get on a call and you go walk and then call me when you get back and you've done 30 minutes. I mean, we tried all kinds of stuff. My average patient, 38 out of 40 people lost 20 pounds within the first year. Sustainably kept it off for 15 years until I left and came down here. So I don't know what happened. 3 of my patients had cardiac disease that they were supposed to be dead in a year, and they lived 10 years. So again, this is not hard research from my friends at the NIH and the CDC and stuff, but I have lived out this program. And then instead of group support, right, terrified therapist, it was love. We're going to have little love groups, just like a potluck supper. And I said, how we're going to start it? Each of us are going to take turns, and you bring brownies 1 week, and you bring celery 1 week, no bad foods. And blah, blah, blah. And so you bring the coffee, honey. 40 people went to 60 people, went to 80 people, went to 100 people. I had them, it was crazy. And my center was 10,000 square feet. That was part of why I built it, by the way. The hospital couldn't contain us anymore. They were bringing people from Stevens County, Hall County. So my point is, because they were seeing Sally change and being happy and positive, do you see? Instead of the medical model, which was cold. And then food. Baptisms, bar mitzvahs, Thanksgiving, Christmas. What's food, guys? Celebration. Diet, food. So they went, oh, we love this. So anyway, I want to tell you, because it's really important for you when you go home to your families or whatever you do with your life, if you can think of yourself as this unbelievable gift of productivity in this planet. You may have 40 years to live, 100, 80, whatever that lifespan is. If you think of yourself as an oak tree with these roots that you can nourish with these 4 roots and go through the seasons of loss, of abundance, of life, whatever it deals you, you keep nourishing those roots. It's just an unbelievably rich life. So anyway, it's been very, very, very successful. Food, then I brought them out, and so what I did, I got to be honest, I'm going to publish a cookbook this year. Well, Andrea's going to publish it for me, one of my tech person. And what I did was, this was a labor of love, guys. I took their favorite recipes and I turned them all into non-meat. Non-meat, excuse me. So, and I'm talking everything from corned beef to turkey to whatever. And it took a long time because I wanted to make the gravies the same, right? So the taste was perfect. Then they'd invite their families, and we'd actually have meals with their families where they didn't know it was not meat. Lives were changed so dramatically. And again, they didn't stop meat altogether, but even 2 days a week. This was 20 years ago when people weren't even doing it like today. with all this stuff. But it took a lot of time, energy, and money and commitment. But I got to tell you, I loved this mitochondria, the cell of every one of my patients. Most of them were poor. When I'd go visit them, they lived in trailers with a brick at the door. Some of them didn't even have handles on their doors. So you got to realize too, where I lived down here and went up to that farm, it was a population, and you guys can talk about what's going on in healthcare today. That is what's driving our healthcare costs. Most of us here can go to an acupuncturist or do this or that. This poverty in these people that I dealt with for 25 and 30 years is what's killing our healthcare system and driving our healthcare costs. So we have to make it meaningful for them so that they understand it. Where science meets the soul. Again, this is somebody who's just even sitting there meditating, and then you can look at the CAT scan if you want. You can look at an MRI, and you can see that the brain changes almost immediately when you start doing a serenity practice. You have 100,000 chemical reactions in your brain every second. Every second. Every thought, word, and action that you do right now, sitting there, is creating a different chemical and a different electrical charge. And so in the old days, when I was training at Harvard, Herb Benson, Dr. Benson, and my trainers were just like all these illustrious people were like, he'll take 15 to 20 minutes for efficacy. You've got to train your people 15 to 20 minutes before efficacy. Because see, all their research showed that. I'm dealing with country folk and poverty, but I was also dealing with people like the Ted Turners of the world too, because I started getting, after my first book, kind of famous. So, but the point was, we noticed that I said, nope, smaller's better. I'll start with 5 minutes. Because if I can do 5 minutes and they love it, they'll do 7 minutes. They'll do 10 minutes. Then they would come back to the group support groups and go, oh, I'm doing 10 minutes twice a day. And they would talk about each other and kind of, then they'd meet. Then they started subgroups, like this table, that table. They started their own lunch groups, card groups. Blood pressures went down 10, 20 points, systolic and diastolic. I'm telling you guys, it was just like miracles happening everywhere, but they owned it. Do you see? They owned, because it was part of, they believed, their divine right to be healthy. Not a doctor telling them. It was the tree. And as a matter of fact, I ran for office once. They asked me to run for office because some of them were even eating cat food at this time. And I'll never forget this. I went into a guy's office who was a pulpwood farmer. And I needed his support, and I walked in, and he said, I don't like women, I don't vote for women. And he said, and I heard you're smart, and I don't like smart women. They go down and read things they don't need to be reading. So I just think you just need to go. And I looked at him, and I went, really? I said, I thought you were a tree farmer. He said, I am. What are you talking about? I'm a pulpwooder. And I went, well, here's the deal, honey. You can vote, I'll use another name. You can vote for Fred, or you can vote for me. You can vote for a pine tree or an oak tree. I said, a pine tree, every time there's a little blizzard, a little snowstorm, a little flurry, it doesn't have any roots. I said, but let me tell you about an oak tree. So he sat there, I'll never forget this, the shock in his face, he teared up, I'll never forget this. He stands up, goes to his back pocket, this is the truth, opens this big wad of $100 bills. And he just starts putting them on the thing, this is a true story. Hands them to me and he goes, I got to vote for an oak tree. I do not like you. And my point is the metaphor of, it's not about politics, it's the metaphor about an oak tree or a pine tree. That when I'm talking to I work with Black African-American boys, I have a foundation. I work with boys 12 to 18 years old. I've done it for 30 years, but this foundation's only 15 years old. And one of the things I ask my kids when they start with our group, they join our foundation, these are the poorest to the poor children that don't have one chance. Their chance of ending in a prison is like so high, I don't even want to think about it. One of the first things I ask them, you want to be an oak tree or a pine tree? And the reason is, while they're making decisions in the hood, while they're making decisions of a drug or to bully somebody or whatever, I ask them, do you want to be an oak tree or do you want to live to be a pine tree? And it may seem a simple, dumb metaphor, but these are the kind of things that get to the existence of a person's soul that help them make soul decisions. And I love this quote by Buddha, no enemy can harm you so much as your own thoughts. And another one, Bruce Lipton, who is another person I trained with, the minute we change our perception, we totally rewrite the chemistry of our brain. So let's go, we're going to go through the 4 roots because I'm going to give you guys some tips. Research, why serenity? It actually grows your brain size. It's neurogenic. It actually creates neurons. They have a good study at Harvard that shows the brain volume increase. That was 20 minutes a day over 10 weeks. Increases productivity. We see it in corporations. We've done all kinds of studies. It improves your memory, stimulates creativity, lowers your heart rate, lowers your cholesterol, also lowers your SID rate, lowers your risk of heart disease, of course, relieves insomnia, and since a third of us are not sleeping at all, hardly. Pain, chronic pain, we actually show people that actually do serenity or do meditation or guided imagery, we see that 50% of their brains quit reacting to pain. It's pretty cool to watch it in real life, by the way. And in insomnia, I studied with Dr. Jacobs, who is the insomniac person, the illustrious author and doctor at Harvard. And he said out of a 10-week program of doing this 4-quadrant program, 100% of his patients reported being better. 90%, now when you think of the healthcare costs, guys, 90% of the patients that he had after the 10 weeks either cut their medication by 50%, and the rest of them quit using any sleep medication at all. So the health outcomes on these things, it's not arbitrary, it's just unbelievable. And infertility. Allie Domer, another person that I trained with at Harvard, she has written a book, but she's an infertility specialist. She took women who had been infertile for 3 years, put them through the same 10-week 4-quadrant program, and 1/3, this is huge, 1/3 of them became pregnant within 6 months. That's nothing to laugh at. I mean, I know you know. This is very serious, unbelievably miraculous stuff. That was such a great word, stuff. So self-care, serenity, reduces stress. The breath. The breath is the first line of defense. And we are not breathing correctly, obviously. We short breathe, we run around. We breathe in about 3/4 of our lungs. And our immune function and the biggest function that we get are on our lower lobes. So all of us running to work, running around, we go home and do everything. We are actually starving our bodies. We can live without food for a while. We can live without water for a while, but you cannot live without oxygen. Our first brain, which is your brain, second brain is your gut. If any of you haven't seen the documentary, Your Second Brain, it's called The Gut, you have to see it. Anybody seen it? Isn't it amazing? And then the third brain, of course, is bacteria. I can't wait for that one to come out. But anyway, it's very, very fascinating because when I was trained, I'm old enough that when we thought everything came from the brain down. And we thought in the mitochondria and the genetics. Now, we're studying the gut, and we don't know if depression and anxiety and stuff may be generated from the gut. And then it goes up to the brain. Do you see saying I'm not metabolizing broccoli, I don't know where to send this thing, I need vitamin B6, and it actually goes back to the brain and says depression, stress, anxiety. So it's a loop, it's a bigger loop than we thought, and we think this is the first brain, second brain, but now we're asking all kinds of very interesting questions with the new scientific research. As a matter of fact, I worked with a guy at MIT just a few months ago, talked to him, and the things that they're doing, looking at the bioloop is just unbelievable. But we rapidly, shallowly breathe. So what happens is, and we breathe through our mouths. So what we're doing is we are doing the sympathetic nervous system. Our body is thinking, oh, it's breathing through my mouth, so that cold air that's dry is going into me, and I'm supposed to take these little lungs that I'm only using 3/4 of, and I'm supposed to make her think, make her menstruate, make her drive a car, make her whatever is going on. So it's like giving a thimble full instead of a bathtub full. So we're sitting there going, oh my God. And think about it. When you're walking around here, when I came up here to this floor, I can't tell you, I was mindfully observing people. It's fun to do. And I know, a lot of people are lost here, of course. And so I was watching their breathing. I mean, half of them, I wanted to take their pulse. I wanted to kiss them. I wanted to put a blanket, one of those heavy blankets around them or something, because they're breathing. I was like, oh, God bless you, my dear angel. But what we know is your first line of defense is your breath and breathing. And I love studying about the breath. Because what happens is the sympathetic nervous system is when we breathe through our mouth, breathe shallowly, but the parasympathetic overrides it. That's the relaxing breath. That's breathing through your nose, down into your lungs, and then releasing it through your mouth. And the parasympathetic will always override the sympathetic. So, as a matter of fact, we have a Dutch study that showed that they had people that had chronic cardiac hospitalizations, and they did exercise in one group, and then the control group, and then they did an exercise in breathing. Some of the breathing exercises we're just going to talk about now. And it cut the rate of hospitalization by 1/3 to 1/2, the group that did breathing exercises and and physical exercise. So that tells you how it changes the whole structure. And it's cool how we're made. I remember I have a big nose. My grandmother had a nose this big. And I remember being a little girl looking up at her going, I was never allowed to say anything. But I'd walk around and my father would not hit me, not hit me, but knock me and go, stop staring, because I was a really observant little kid. And you weren't allowed to stare at Amish people, and you weren't allowed to stare at the priest at church, and you were not allowed to stare at my grandmother's big nose. And I would watch it, and so I grew up, blah, blah, and got to be an adult. And then I'll be honest with you, I was probably 35, maybe 40. And two of my friends asked me to go to a plastic surgeon with them because they were going to get nose jobs. So we sat there in the waiting room looking at noses. This is a true story. And I was just like, wow. Well, I go home and think it didn't bother me, but 2 days later I look at Jim and I go, I think I need a nose job. And he was like, are you joking? And I said, no. And of course, he's an internist. He's a gastroenterologist. My daughter is critical care pulmonary. So, you know them, no surgery if you don't need it. As you guys know, adhesions, whatever. So anyway, this goes on. And so the way God would do it, my phone rings a week later and my grandmother's dying. So I go up to Ohio and she wants to see me. I looked exactly like her. So she's dying and, and you know what happens. She's in, and I'm looking at this nose. So I'm looking at my grandmother's nose, and she's telling me how much she adored me as a little girl, and I was the tiny one she sent me up to pick the cherries when she made cherry pies, and she's telling me all these stories, and I'm looking at this nose, and she died while I was there. So I go home, and it changed my life because I looked at my nose and I went, oh my God, this is my grandmother. Fast forward. 2 months later, I'm up at Harvard, and this guy's giving a lecture on breathing and noses, and he goes, an adaptation thing was if you look through history, you only married people with big noses or Roman noses because it was a very powerful thing, and they figured you were healthy if you had a big nose. Isn't this interesting? Where science meets the soul? We didn't know, right? Isn't this the physics and biology of what happens in the breathing thing? But you married, and the bigger nose person you married, man or woman. And if you'll notice a lot of ancient pictures, you know how they show the side profile with the nose? That's why. It meant, baby, you got her. Whereas now we'd go clip, clip. And so it was a big deal. Now I'm up there learning from all these experts about breathing. Do you know that, does anybody know Fibonacci? I'm so glad nobody's just taking still pictures because I went like this. I'm so glad this is moving. Anyway. Fibonacci it's a sequencing. We call it the divine number. And what it is a nebula, a star, a sunflower, a wave. What are some other things? Shells. Everything has the same, it's a counterclockwise numerical. We call it the creation thing. Like the first time I ever saw a nebula out when I was on an astronomy thing, I wept and cried. And the scientist from Stanford said, do you know why you're crying, don't you? And I said, no, it's the most magnificent thing. He said, you are experiencing the absolute divine spark of creation. It's called Fibonacci, and as it's opening up, it's the birth of the universe. Also, when you conceive in your womb, it's the same number. When the baby implants, when the zygote implants into your uterus, it's the same numerical sequence as it digs into your womb. It's just, isn't it just like the coolest thing? So our nose is the same. Our nose is the same. It's the same sequencing so that you think you're just breathing in, right? No. It's taking that air, it's circling it around, taking it down, and see those tubular things are driving it down to your lower lobes. Isn't that cool? The way we're made? It's just like a miracle. Hello? And so I'm sitting there like freaked out. So you need to know that. Breathe through your nose, and then you exhale through your mouth. Always breathe through your nose. Number one, the other thing, all this air is dry. It's loaded with pollutants, everything. The hair in your nose is actually miraculous. It keeps out pollen, pollutants. It actually makes it moist from the time you breathe in till the time it gets here. It moistens it, it heats it. So it's just an amazing thing. And that's why I don't want to just teach you, oh, breath. It is like the most. And also, if you, I love history and I love words. I grew up, of course, in a Catholic school learning Latin. So pneuma is, there's no separate words for lung, for breathing and soul in languages, and except English and a few other ones. Ruha is Hebrew, breath, soul. It's chi in Chinese. It's ruha in Hebrew. And in every language, it's one. Yet we have no respect for our breath. We have no respect. And when I was a chaplain at Choa or a chaplain at Northside, and I was a chaplain at Emory, I'll never forget, I was learning this stuff simultaneously, and it was unbelievable to watch a baby come in at Northside and not breathe and be blue and die for that baby to take a breath and it not do it or do it. And then at the end of life, as we call it, the O-ring, you guys know, at the end of life, and breathing and when it leaves and the soul leaves. So if you teach your child one thing in your life or your grandchildren or your friend, please teach them about breathing. It is the most instantaneous, immediate thing you can do, anything in your life. And I'll be honest with you, working with the Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh, Desmond Tutu, whatever, they inherently didn't study like I did, the empirical, the scientific, the whatever, but they innately knew to do that. Desmond Tutu, I taught beside him for 6 months at Emory. He told me story after story after story, and I'd go, what was the first thing that happened when the white lieutenant came up with the gun and put it? Well, Kathleen, I breathed, of course. Jimmy Carter, whatever happened to him in the White House, and the Senate would drag him or do anything, and I'd go, what was the first? Well, of course, Kathleen, I breathed, I stopped. So, and they didn't take any learning, or how did they innately know the sanctity of it? And if any of you are Christian or you're Islam or whatever religion you are, you can go to any of your religious texts and you will find how holy the breath is in every single one of them. So, basics on breathing is inhale, exhale. Abdominal breathing, this was hard for me because I was raised to put my shoulders back, stomach flat, I'm a woman, is your belly's got to be out. So put your hand on your chest, hand on your belly, and when you deep breathe, everybody just put, right now, don't cross your legs or arms. And when you breathe, it's cool if you do it in your bed, when you wake up in the morning and go to bed at night. When you breathe, see, it should be, your belly should be out and your chest should be in. So that is proper breathing. And we're done with flat stomachs and being men. We're not, we have the babies, okay? We got the wisdom, we got it going on here. So when you're breathing, be proud of it. It's really cool on an elevator when you watch people get horrified when your belly's out like this and you're breathing. So much fun. Brings up all their issues. And then you just push the button and get off on the next floor. It's so cool. So it's really important, breathing, bedtime breathing. This is one I learned from Andy Weil. Those of you that have trouble sleeping, or if you have kids or a spouse, sit up in bed, cross your legs, and it's called 4-7-8 breathing. Breathe in to the count of 4. Hold it for 7. And then exhale through your mouth or 8. Now, do that 4 times. What we know, this particular breath goes back to the Upanishads and the Vedas, back like 10, 15, 20,000 years in Hindu. They actually did, back then they could even do heart rates and everything else. It actually calms you down, balances your right and left lobes. So that's bedtime breathing. And again, I can give you some of this stuff that you can hand out or help these people. There's anxiety relieving breath. And this really, really works. I do this with some of my kids. Some of my little inner city kids get anxiety attacks, standardized tests. A lot of them are in foster care and get moved around. My kids' stories are unbelievable. So this is where you take your thumb on your ring finger on your left, and you take it like this, and your thumb on your right nostril, and you're going to start with your right, try it, and I'm not going to take pictures of you, so don't worry. You breathe in on your right, and then out on your left. Then in, and then out. And you alternate back and forth between 7 to 8 times, sit up in your bed. And what that does is keep focused and focused on your breath. what it does is when you're stressed, if you're right-handed or left-hand dominant, and your prefrontal cortex, your reptilian brain, what it does is it makes all of them get balanced. It makes all of them think, and so it defaults to all 4 levels. And then just regular breathing, which is the inhale 4, exhale 4. So you go inhale, and then exhale 4. Another thing is, especially in Atlanta, I suggest that people, stoplights, traffic jams, getting to work 5 minutes early before you leave and get on the commute. These are your special me times that you can do these kinds of things for yourself prophylactically. Do it as a prevention thing, and because you love your body, and because you want to live a long time, and not because what we're dealing with now is we're all going to live forever. It's not about living longer. It's about living independently longer, okay? And not being tied to debt with your family and yourself. One I use quickly for my children, because I do a lot of, with the DeKalb County. I know you guys know this, test stress is a lot with children, and it's a lot performance tests with corporations and people. So I actually teach them box breathing, which is very good for anxiety, for tests that we actually have studies that show how effective it is. And what that is my children, you pretend there's a box, and you close your eyes and you imagine there's a box. Start at the left corner, and you breathe in to the count of 5 to the top of the box, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you go across the top of the box to the count of 5, hold it, and you're still holding your breath. Then you exhale down the box, hold your breath. So what my kids do, and my clients and patients, is you go around and you're holding the breath, okay? So it's called box breathing. Now, for some reason, it makes the intellect and our cognition more than the other breaths. Isn't it cool? And remember, again, back to the Vedas and back to the Upanishads, their world leaders and their holy people actually did certain breaths before they did certain things because they knew it produced a totally different thing. So now let's pretend that the whole family showed up for Thanksgiving, and Uncle Billy has gas, and your daughter doesn't want to sit by your grandmother, whatever's happening, and you're in your bedroom and you go, oh my God, and you're exhausted because you've been cooking for 2 days. So Dr. Crisalla, who's he's a professor at MIT and Harvard, he taught us this a long time ago, and it's called the energy breath, and you can do this anywhere. And stand up, and what you do is pretend that you're a measuring cup from your hip to the top of your shoulder, okay? So 1/4, half, 3/4, full. 3/4, half, 1/4, empty. Now, this is really interesting when you're teaching in schools because a lot of these kids have never seen Pyrex measuring cups. So it's hard, I have to draw it. I can't do this image because, Dr. Hall, what is a Pyrex measuring cup? I said, darling, we'll make something later, we'll bake. But the point is what you want to do, and what you will see is this unbelievable energy that you can do anything. The brain loves it, but we'll try it and I'll show you. Okay, so it's impossible for me to breathe and talk at the same time. I'm trying it. I've been trying it for a long time and it doesn't work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do it, and I'm going to go, instead of saying 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to do it with my hands just to show it to you. Okay, and when we do it together, we're going to do it 5 times, but I'm going to do it twice first. Okay, so. Okay, so your belly button should be about half. Okay, ready? Now I'm going to call it out and I'm going to physically do it, but I'm not going to be breathing doing it. So we're going to do it 5 times and do it very confidently. And by the way, this is also for my people that are trying to have sex, that are impotent and all kinds of other things. This is a very sexually arousing, being honest with you. We use it for sexual problems. And, oh, hey, baby, you won't have to take the elevator. Wait till you go back to work this afternoon. They'll go, what happened? What did Lauren feed you for lunch, Robin? Anyway, so here we go. And I'm going to go like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you guys ready? Nose and then exhale mouth. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4. 4, 2, 3, 4. 4, 2, 3, 4. 5, 2, 3, 4. 5, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now stop. That was really bad. Because if you were really doing it, listen to me do it. One person. Okay, this was you guys. See, you're being so polite. See, how can you really think you're going to have great sex if you're doing it that way? Okay, so we're going to try it again. We'll just do it like 4 times this time, okay? But really do it. Like, I'm going to be leaving and you'll never have to see me again, maybe. But do it with gusto. Okay, here we go. Ready? Now, breathe in. And remember, you have 4, so hold, four quadrant. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 3, yes, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4. Yes, 3, 2, 3, 4. 4, 2, 3, 4. 4, 2, 3, 4. Okay, stop for a minute. Now I want you to feel yourself. Feel your head, feel your heart, and then go down below your belly button and feel too. See how it is? Here, sit down. And I'm going to tell you something else. If you teach your children to breathe when they're K through 6, they think it's fun. And my child, the one who's the doctor, she happened to go to Duke, and then she went to Georgetown. She went to all these places. And she would always go to the nurses' station, and the nurses love her. They're like one family. You guys know that. You know, you're inseparable, especially in an ICU. And goes in when she has to, withdrawal care, horrible patients, horrible outcomes, 16-year-old hit by a car and they got to harvest organs. I mean, her life sucks pretty much. But she goes and breathes. I mean, she loves what she does. But my point is that it reestablishes you, grounds you for the family, for decisions you have to make, for other doctors when a surgeon wants to operate and you're saying no. You understand? Very complicated stuff. Clearly focuses you. And guess what? Oak tree. You're nourishing those roots. Brings you right back to yourself. Right back to yourself. And again, please don't underestimate the power of breathing. Stoplights. There is not one stoplight in Atlanta when I stop that I don't breathe. I play with it. And play with it like, I don't know. I don't shoot dice, but, play with it. Stoplights. Do a box breathing at one. Then do the 1, 2, 3, 4. Do the 4 or 5 one. And then the cool thing is my husband, he's a gastroenterologist, very, very busy. He started doing it. He's got 25 people in his GI lab. He's got 12 employees at his office. He's very busy. They all started to do it. They made fun of him at first, and they love him. He loves them, and so they've got kids. These are you guys know these are nurses. These are hardworking people. Now answering the phone. I had a big interview yesterday. Supposed to be 11 o'clock, 5 minutes before 11. I did the energy breath because I was exhausted from these steroids and other things. And then I did the deep anxiety breath. Before eating, it's a very big blessing at our home. Before we eat food, we stop and we don't do the energy breath because, we don't want to have, especially my husband's 71, we don't want to have raucous sex all the time. It's a joke. But so we don't do the energy breath before dinner. But it's nice to do like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it combines us as a family. We've been married 45 years and are so madly in love, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's silly, and the amount of respect that we have for each other. And I was running a hospital. Does anybody know the medical center in Columbus, Georgia? I was running that hospital. I was the credit and collection manager, and he was a 135-pound, 6'2", emaciated, skinny, medical student who came in to tell me that I couldn't throw out his patient because they, were not going to get readmitted. And I looked at him and I said, honey, let me tell you something, sugar. I know you don't know this, but I run the money, $10 million, and you're a medical student. So who do you think is going to win this thing? So we talked. He went back to the emergency room and he talked to Dr. Jernigan and he said, I've never seen a woman like that. Where'd she come from? So it was love at first sight. When he went over there, I went to the bathroom and threw up. And I came back and my assistant said, you're in love. And I said, you've got to be, are you kidding me? So anyway, it was literally love at first sight. So before eating, and also we have timers on our phones. Set your timer every 2 to 3 hours before you go on break, okay? Where are we time-wise? Okay, I want to just do some meditations, go over some meditations because the other routes are faster and easier. Breathing meditations, we talked about that. Just be quiet and you can set your timer and do these breathing for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long. You can do a silent meditation, which is, again, the breathing in silence. One I do every morning and every night of my life is body scan. And again, we can do it would take a whole nother class to do all these different types of meditations. But what I look at everything like is we love ice cream at our house. We make ice cream all the time. And now these are things that we don't scrimp on fat or anything. We do it the old-fashioned way. But in saying that, I look at breathing like Baskin-Robbins, all the flavors, and I look at meditation like all the flavors. So don't think of it as, again, like my patients in North Georgia. Don't think of it as negative. Think of it as fun. This is your body and your life, and it's the only one you're going to get. So another type of meditation twice a day is a body scan. With the emergence of epigenetics and what we know about cellular biology now and mitochondria, there is intelligence in every cell of your body. So here we are, and again, we talked about the brain 1, brain 2, third brain bacteria. We live our whole lives and we don't talk to our organs. We don't communicate. They're communicating with each other, as you well know. The liver's talking to the stomach, talking to the brain. But we're out here like some rotating thing, satellite. Think about the Earth, aren't we? We're just thinking about our body. So one of my teachers, Thich Nhat Hanh, taught us to go in and actually do body scans and be grateful. So every day of my life, and I hope you consider this, lay in your bed, you wake up, and you go to your right lobe and your left lobe in your brain and the prefrontal cortex in your back, and you go, good morning, thank you for healing me, all night long, because that's what you did. I was sleeping, and you were working your, I'm very honest in my meditations. You were really working all night long, thank you. Then go to your eyes and go, what will I see today? Will I see a baby? Crepe myrtles have been trimmed. I'm looking for, because it's this time of year. What will I see today? Is it going to rain? Go to your ear. Thank you. Thank you, eyes, for 68 years of all the pain and suffering and beauty that I've seen and witnessed in this world. Then go to your ears. My husband just had a hearing loss in one of his ears. He wished that he would have thanked his ears. He really grieved because it will not come back. So every day, don't assume that you're going to have all this. I thank my ears and go, thank you, God, for my ears. I heard a baby laughing or crying. I heard my mother right before she died, whisper how much she loved me. I mean, thank your ears, thank your nose. This thing right here is a miracle. Your mouth, I usually like to take your jaw because TMJ is so big now, 3 times to the left, 3 times to the right. Thank your gums, which feed your teeth. Thank this beautiful tongue, go down your throat. Thank your esophagus, go into your stomach and go, if you like to eat as much as I do, thank God for my stomach. And I tell it, thank you. And of course, Jim's a gastroenterologist. And I thank God, and I thank God that I'm able to eat these things, and thank you for processing food. Then the next thing is go across your GI tract to your liver, your gallbladder, your pancreas, and say, thank you. Thank you. You produce all of these chemicals and you balance my life, and I never tell you thank you. Thank you, thank you. From the time I was conceived in my mother's womb, you have been working and doing all this. I just want to say grateful gratitude. Then go back and instead of go down to your trachea, then go to your lungs, do the lung system. Go, thank you, lungs. I can't do anything without breath. And I came out of my mother at 3 o'clock in the morning in Ohio in a snowstorm, and just thank you for that first breath. And I know there's going to be a last one, the final one. And just thank God that I'm able to breathe. My husband has horrendous asthma. So I appreciate breath like unbelievable. And I did pulmonary rehab. Heart, you talk to that heart. And you just say, thank you for love, the loss I've had, my broken hearts, my joy. When they handed me my baby the first time, we lost a child, when I lost my child. It didn't break. You get what I mean? It came back stronger. So and I get emotional because when you talk to your organs, it's amazing what they give you this spiritual, hey, I've been here for 68 years. Nobody's thanked me for anything. So it's a really moving thing. And when you teach your children and your spouse and other people, I'm telling you, you make their life, we're living in an era where people do not have meaning and purpose in their lives. That's the facts. And it's got to start at home. It's got to start with these perfect little things we've been blessed to walk around with. Body, mind, and soul. So do the scan, and what I like to do is, one of my teachers just taught me to scan it, and this was Thich Nhat Hanh, meaning ask, are there any tumors? More of a medical thing. Do you have anything? Are you okay? But then later, a professor who's written books on gratitude and the science of gratitude, he actually said, why don't you say thank you? It will change, it will literally change the cellular tissue and the density around the cell. So if you would do that, and then go down into your small intestine, large intestine, colon, and don't forget your ovaries and testes and your kidneys. God bless your kidneys and your bladder. And then your bones, which give you structure. If you didn't have these bones, you wouldn't have this armor. You wouldn't have this protection. And then last but not least, thank God for your skin. It protects you. It keeps diseases out. It keeps cold and heat. It regulates our bodies. So let me tell you, I'm talking a long way around it, but if I just did that in my bed, that only took 3 minutes, maybe 5. And I'm telling you, you're almost elevated off the bed. You will not believe how you feel about yourself when you start your day, and the reverence, respect that you have for this amazing body. And anyway, so there's a lot more of them. But before I do that, I'll just tell you quickly. One is affirmations. If you're religious and you like Hail Mary, full of grace, Lord Jesus Christ. If you're Jewish, El Elohim, whatever it is. What we know is research shows if you say 3 words, a mantra over and over again, it changes your blood pressure, lowers your heart rate. It really works. Another kind of, and again, this is Baskin Robbins. Pretend you're pistachio, maple chocolate, whatever you're doing, have fun. And what I do is I play every day. She knows. I play around with these, and I'll do all kinds of different things every day. And there's apps for all this, which I will give Lauren and Robin, because what I do is, I know there's hundreds of thousands of apps. So part of my job for my corporations and CBS and Oprah and all the other things, Dr. Oz, mine is to curate them to see which ones I think have the most efficacy and easy for women and all of us on the go to use. Nature is huge. Remember, reptilian brain. We go back, guys, 100,000 years. We can live in this city and do all this stuff, but the first place to calm down are nature apps, and they're amazing. Birds, I listened to birds this morning. Tonight I'm going to listen to an owl on the full moon, so I'm even excited about that. Yesterday, because of this coming off of these steroids, my heart was beating out of my chest, and I was numb in my hands and fingers. So we have great science, by the way, at MIT and Harvard on drumming. It actually lowers your blood pressure, lowers your heart rate. We're seeing differences in outcomes in cardiovascular disease when people listen to certain kind of drumming, single shamanic drumming. I have an app for that. So I did that yesterday for 10 minutes. My heart rate went down from probably 130 to probably 82 within 3-4 minutes, that quickly. But see, remember, neuroplasticity. I have been doing this, so the minute my brain hears something, it knows to adapt right away. Do you see? It will take you a little while, but your brain's going to love it, because it's going to go, oh, I'm in the ice cream store, Mom. I'm going to have this flavor today. See, your body will actually perform and know that. And again, as much fun as I love doing this, as you can tell, I work with kids, so I have to be adaptable to my worst clients. God, am I saying this really in front of this camera? Is very dry corporations. Not the European ones. They love this stuff. It's major corporations I work with, Fortune 500 companies, that the reason that they have me in there is to check the list, for their liability insurance and all that stuff. But they really, that's pretty much it. Music, what we know is that the brain changes almost immediately with music. It produces serotonin. Guided imagery, I have my favorite. I trained with her 25 years ago from Cleveland Clinic in the cardiovascular program is where she started, and we see outcomes. But when I give you how to get a hold of her, guided imagery, do it anywhere, and this is another thing I do when I'm driving, any place, anytime, is athletes do it every day, right? I'm going to make that basket. Sexual, we watch shows all the time. I mean, it's not really happening, but our bodies are reacting to what we see. That's all guided imagery, okay? Negative guided imagery is worry. So right now, for a couple seconds, where is your favorite place? If you could be anywhere in the world, it's the most calming place. Ocean, mountain, bedroom. Think about where it is. Take a deep breath. And if you stayed in that place with your eyes closed and just did one of our breathing techniques, your whole biosystem, your whole body will change almost immediately because your brain thinks you're there. I was on a plane where the landing gear didn't go in LaGuardia recently, and we were going to have a pretty bad outcome. And the guy next to me asked why I was so calm, and I went, I'm not here. I'm in Keneal Bay, down on the Virgin Islands. And of course, they thought I was on crack or something, but I went, I don't care. I'm having a good time. So meditation, mindfulness, positive affirmations, guided imagery, gratitude. There's a whole science behind each one of these. Could be a different class. Music, nature, we call it ecotherapy. They did the first research in Belgium and England on nature therapy. Laughter, when you're stressed, your artery diameter decreases 33%. The minute you start laughing, it increases 25% to 35%. Laughter. A smile, we look at the zygote muscles, people that smile. Here's the interesting thing. I studied with somebody who knew Margaret Mead and did all of this amazing research. And so if I'm looking at this African-American black woman right there with a beautiful smile and long hair, okay, so I'm looking at you. So see, from here, I see this smile, so what does it evoke in me? Endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, and it makes me want to draw to you. So it's an adaptation thing, right? Now, if she gives me a nasty look, I'm going to have a little adrenaline, withdraw. So see, it's in the Serengeti when we were all evolving, right? It's an adaptation for survival. Now, we're all walking around like this. Getting on, I got on the elevator. How many people do you think were smiling? I mean, I love Piedmont. It's all around and stuff, and I'm like, wow. And who taught me the most about this is Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, two of my teachers. I was very blessed to be teaching at Emory when they were there, sabbaticals and stuff. They consider the basic practice of their life compassion, gratitude, and smiling. They said it is the biggest thing any human being can do, is if you're walking down, you never know when somebody needs a smile. And especially you healthcare practitioners, you are the first line of offense, love, and healing to people of what a smile does. And we've got huge science that shows what it does. Journaling, Pennebaker did the initial research on journaling for cardiovascular disease. We see that people that actively journaled, I think for the 10 weeks after their cardiac event, actually not only lived 10 years longer, but also, lived 10 years longer, and a third of them never had another event. So journaling's huge. Altruism is just loving other people. Reading, instead of critical reading that we taught, part of my education at Emory and at Columbia was learning how to read, that we read critically, but they teach you how to formatively read, like a psalm or a poet or Shakespeare. You read the same phrase over and over, and we actually look at MRIs and we put ports in people and watch when you formatively read after 3 minutes what happens to your blood pressure, your heart rate, your SED rate, the thickness of your blood. So it's pretty amazing, even formative reading, which I teach that too. Sleep tips real quick. Attitude, your bedroom's got to be your nest. I don't care what you do, clean it out, box everything up. I paid for a woman who was suicidal who was washing my hair at a hair shop one day. And I took her to, I made her leave with me. I went to Home Depot and bought her favorite color paint. I got a guy to go paint her room, all this kind of stuff, changed her room, cleared everything out of it. 6 months later, I saw her because I went in for another haircut, because I cut my hair at the farm with horse scissors. But anyway, I thought I'd treat myself to a real coiffure. So anyway, 6 months later, I go in, and she's this peppy, little, cute African-American black girl popping around. So she treated her room like the coziest place on earth and like her womb, like she returned to her nest in her womb her entire night. And it changed her life. And her father wrote me a letter, by the way, and I still have it, about how much he really believed that one little tiny thing saved her life. And it's not me. It's just like you. We all go out of here as teachers, teaching other kids, but it's your nest. Keep a regular sleeping schedule. Technology's got to go in a basket. Temperature, keep it between 62 and 65 degrees at night. Sound, I could not practice and do what I do without these. These are the Alexa earphones, and the reason is they have, it's connected to all my apps, whether I'm going to do drumming, my Baskin-Robbins stuff, and then you don't bother anybody else. Color and blackout, make sure you have blackout curtains. Colors make a difference in your room. I don't have time to teach that today. Bedtime rituals, apps, which I have a list for. No heavy meals. Bedtime snacks are milk, tryptophan, something like a piece of turkey. And also make sure you keep a piece of paper by your bed, because what we know is when you start worrying in the middle of the night, we desomatize it. You write it down and go, call the principal, or really important things like unload the dishwasher. I mean, you know what we worry about. Come on, we're women. It's ridiculous. Exercise. What fits your busy? This is my husband. That's his belly, too. Exercising 1 hour a day or dead 24 hours a day. He's a man of few words, so I really did get that for him. And you guys know all this, 1/3 fewer deaths, 30 to 40%. And again, you guys are smart. I want you to, I'm a finance person originally, I want you to put the healthcare numbers, what this costs are. Can you imagine reducing chronic disease 40%? 50% reduction in cancer, depression, relieves insomnia, slows aging. And here's self-care exercise, dance. Dance. I mean, I don't go a day without dancing. After I do my dishes at night, I have Jack Russell's and a 3-legged cat. She doesn't do well, but that's okay. But I dance right after, just for a few minutes. My mother, we were poor, we had nothing, and she was so horribly abused. But my God, every night of my life, my mother danced and sang. God bless her soul. Online games are huge. I actually worked for Microsoft and EA, Electronic Arts, and these genius people. We did research on what happens to the brain when you play 5 minutes. Play playful games. Play, our brain needs play. Yoga, we've actually got great science on yoga, reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease, depression. That's a whole nother one. Stairs at work, take the stairs, go on a lunch walk. Get a group together. And you guys live here. Decide to go to a restaurant down there, you'll get a 10-minute walk on their back. You do all of SELF. You get outside, ecotherapy. You have good food, and you have community. You have people you love. Lift a 5-pound weight, keep it by your desk. If you're at a hostile work environment, I tell people don't do it. It could be a little suspicious. Join a sports team, family exercise, walks, basketball. We had a basketball court and a badminton court every day of our lives. We did sports with our children, even if it was hitting a couple times basketball. And this is my husband, too. This is devoted to him. His deepest emotions, what are my deepest? Hungry and tired. They're my deepest emotions. I know none of you live with that. And then love, it decreases heart disease, cancer. This is probably, in all my years, Dean Ornish and Herb Benson at Harvard and I believe that this is maybe the biggest one, even in stress. Isolation kills and community heals, which was with our technology age. This is a huge challenge right now, guys. Self-care, animals. I have people that do not like people. They do not love people. They don't want to be around people, so I make them get an animal. Work, get a study group. Study spirituality. Study, I don't care, gardening, study anything. Get a study group. You wouldn't believe the people that want to learn things because they're tired when they get home, and maybe do it 30 minutes at lunch. Flowers. Epstein, Harvard, another person. She did studies on people that just have fresh cut flowers when you're at Kroger or whatever. Do you know that the depression rate is like 25% less, cardiovascular disease, blood pressure goes down? It's tremendous, just us seeing live flowers in your home. This is longitudinal research, amazing. So don't think, George Clooney said, what changed his life, he was doing a movie in Italy. I'll never forget this. I met him at a think tank I went to. He was on the second floor, and he said he'd sit there at night after he'd acted all day, and he'd watch people go by. And he said that's when he knew he had to move to Como, Italy. And he said what they did was every man was covered with dirt or plaster from working all day, just regular work. And they'd be walking home, and he said there were 2 things that they brought home every day of their life: bread and flowers. And he said that's when his life changed about being in the United States and being Western. He said if you were the poorest of the poor or whatever, it was the foundational part of their culture. Okay, this is important, guys, for those of you that have families. You're the CEO. You got to have family meetings once a week. And I have a whole curriculum for that I can share with her later. Robin. And what it is how to create a mindful family meeting. They're unbelievable. It will save your life. Jim and I have been doing it for 35, 40 years. And you do it once a week. The kids hated it. It was on Wednesday night. They rolled their eyes. But if we didn't have it, they were the first ones that said, where's our meeting? It was like an AA meeting. And what you do is have silence. You go around, what did you love today or this week? What problems are you having this week? How does your body feel? It's like a check-in thing, and it's really beautiful. And you have a prayer and concern box for the family. We had these made. This is one you can put a family picture. This is particularly one we had. Here's a prayer and concern box for a woman. This is for by your bed. This is one we developed for my corporate clients that are men that didn't want anybody to know that they meditated or prayed. So it looks like this, see? So, and they keep their prayers and concerns in there. So I adapted products to listening to clients, listening to people throughout the years. But anyway, you do this, and the kids have to be in charge of the meeting because we're teaching them mindfulness and the silence, and then they're the ones that read the concern box for the week, because see, there's paper and pencil in here that if you're worried about a test, if you're worried about somebody bullying you, if the wife's worried about losing her job, then the little child is who opens it, it's precious, and they read, Mommy is afraid she'll lose her job, or Daddy, do you see? So it brings everybody in on the same page, because you can't protect your children. That's not what cultures are about. I learned that from living. I worked my way from the Navajo and the Hopi and the Cherokee all the way up to the Arctic Circle with tribes, the Athabascans, the Inuits, and everything, studying. They don't hide things and keep things. Everything is a circle. It's not patriarchal and vertical. So anyway, family meetings are huge. It'll change your life. And then community, book clubs, gardening. We started a gardening group in our HOA. And then food, finally, this is it. I'm going to order, this is me at the fish market. I'm going to, she knows, I'm going to order broiled chicken breasts, but I want you to bring me lasagna and garlic bread. Because they bring you bread when you know, if you ask for it. And so I never say anything, but I go like this, and then they bring the bread, and they go, oh gosh, Dr. Hall, I'm sorry, I forgot I brought you double butter and bread like you used to get. And I went, oh, I don't want to waste it. It's like, rub the butter in my face. Food is medicine. Food changes our mood. Food affects outcomes of diseases. It prevents disease. Again, you all know these. You can look these up. Salmon, we know omega-3s. Oranges, the National Institute of Cancer said that it is the perfect anti-cancer food. And the reason is vitamin C is water soluble. 30% of Americans are walking around with not enough vitamin C. So it's really important that we have vitamin C. Broccoli, Johns Hopkins study shows that if you have an existing tumor, eating 1 cup of broccoli for 10 weeks reduced the tumor size by 60%. The people that did not have cancer, it reduces the risk of getting tumors and cancer by 75%. Broccoli is no joke. You guys, you know how when you put broccoli in the refrigerator, you open that thing and it smells gas? It's the gas they've studied. It actually is anti-mutagenic. It actually kills cancer cells. It's very cool. So if you do anything in your life, make sure that you have blueberries, neurogenesis. My friend, I'm very privileged, who is up at Boston and at Harvard, he actually did the original studies a long time ago on blueberries. And he told me 30 years ago when he was beginning with mice, he said, you got to do blueberries. He said, you're not going to believe what we're seeing in their brains. It's anti-aging, anti-cancer, heart disease, anti-heart disease. And we know about lycopene in tomatoes. You have to, it's anti-cancer, you have to eat tomatoes. Now, I like it in salsa, spaghetti sauce, Mexican food. So I'm not going to put any curbs on where you get it, but you need to eat tomatoes. B6 helps the body create serotonin, which is the calming hormone. Make sure you get foods with B6. And my favorite is the green tea. And also I want to throw in GI diseases, not just tea, coffee. My husband is a gastroenterologist. He's one of the busiest ones in the country, to be honest with you. And he does a lot of clinical research and studies because he's got a good control group population. And this is no joke about coffee and anti-cancer and heart disease. We all need to be drinking at least 1 to 2 cups a day. If you can, drink decaf. It doesn't matter if it's caffeinated or not. The incidence of GI diseases, pancreatic cancer, liver cancers and stuff is dramatically decreased. So if you can, because a lot of my friends are like woo-woo, woo-woo-y, so they just, coffee is so plebeian. So, you know, they only do all these expensive teas at Tiffany. So then when all this came out, I went, it's like my granny with the big nose. Balance, Kathleen, balance. You're an oak tree. Come on, you don't want to be a pine tree. So that's that. We know about garlic. Here, this is the end. Nourish your senses. Anything you do in your life, make sure a couple times a day go through your sight. What am I seeing? What am I smelling? Because these are the portals to your stress and your well-being in their 5 senses. And this is all mindfulness. This is all about mindful living. Tasting and what am I touching? And these are the apps that I have, and I was going to have you listen to all of them. We don't have time for that right now, but maybe we can have a little app thing at some point. But even for an example, this is the shamanic drumming. Now, if you listen to that for 5 minutes, laying in your bed, sitting anywhere, taking a break with your earphones on, or your little, okay, right to left is where it moves first, then prefrontal cortex, okay, your amygdala, it moves all through the brain. And if you see the science behind it, it's absolutely freaky. The calm app, which is one I like, okay, that just happens to be the ocean. So and again, I have my front page of my phone, my second screen of my phone is all of these amazing apps. This NutriSmart, I love Taco Bell, okay? This is like my support group, confessions. I love Taco Bell. And I love McDonald's fish sandwich. So I'm not gonna give up some of the stuff I really love, and thank God Burger King has my new Impossible Burger. That when you go, it's not about doing without again. Please remember, I've worked with patients forever. It's about making choices. So if I ate Taco Bell 5 days a week, or I ate wherever 5 days a week, it'd be horrible. But what this app does, it gives you fat, calories, so you can exchange. Even when I go to Taco Bell last night, I got so excited, want to have a Mexican pizza or a beef burrito? And Jim said, you are too excited. You need to calm down. So I go and then I look about which one I want. We have our own mindful living app that we've just developed. Thank God, Vanna and Andrea have developed. It's absolutely amazing. It's got stress tips, podcasts, all kinds of stuff on it. And Gaia, the reason I like Gaia is you can be at home, in your bed, you can be watching TV, and they have 5-minute yoga, stretch yoga, bed yoga, stress, pregnancy, grief, all kinds of stuff, and it's right there. And you can have your own playlist on Gaia. Also, by the way, I love the Noise app. It's called Going to Bed with Color, and here, pink noise is the color that you want. This is loud. Not white noise. White noise, gray noise, pink noise. There was just a huge scientific article on pink noise and sleep. So I'd had trouble with these steroids, and I've been doing pink noise. It absolutely takes you out. Also, this would take another course on sleep. There are acupressure points that you can touch. That was about it. These are like 500 classes, you can imagine, right? Each one of these segments is a class. So, but Robin and I wanted to kind of do an over, didn't we? Kind of run stuff through and see how you liked it, or were you interested, and if you want more education or more different things. Hopefully, I told them my goal is I hope I can do some support groups here like I did before years ago, because I miss it. Being famous or writing books can seem fine, but it's sterile and you're alone, and media interviews are alone. And so I've ended up in a life that's very different than I thought, because I'm a teacher. My kids are my life, and I see terminal people or people suicidal and all that. But I'd love to get back into the womb of life. So anyway, all these things are teachable, and I'll give Robin and Lauren resources. And again, before I leave, I just you have literally saved my life, all of you at Piedmont in one way or another, and several of my friends. And I humbly, humbly come before you and thank you for, when you get tired of your job or you're working or you're on that commute, please know that people like me, when I pray at night, I pray for every one of you, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.